the art part at the moment, because part of that magic, we can use the word fetish, and that's what we're seeing. I think many professors and people that are standing up against this damaging destruction towards our bodies as human beings, they're using the word fetish. That joins with magic. That's the turquoise in the flag. So etymology, when you look at where do these words come from, I've got something I'll read here now. I am not good with languages, so you're going to have to excuse the massacre of some of these words, but it's important that we understand that our words do have root meanings, root words that they come from, that they still hold the spiritual side of what is being said. Fetish, let me read this. It talks about material object regarded with awe as having mysterious powers or bringing the representative of a deity. Ishtar. We're talking about an ancient mystery religion. We're talking about Luciferianism, Mithraism, Satanism. Representative of a deity that may be worshipped through it. So whatever that might be. And obviously the human form, whether you've a man and you've had now got artificial breasts because you've been through surgery. These people are turned into demigods. 1610s, Fetiso, from Portuguese fietico, means charm, sorcery, allurement. It's a noun use of an adjective meaning artificial, which is exactly what the trans movement is all about. It's an artificial culture, artificially changing their bodies, artificially changing the way mainstream culture views them by their heavy-handed hate speech laws, etc. I'll go on. The Portuguese adjective is from the Latin facticius, meaning made by art, artificial. This harks back to ancient art with their very sexualized postures. They're stripped of clothing, their transgender body parts, making of demigods out of young boy lovers. The cultures back then, you had an older man that mentored a young boy. Part of that mentoring was the homosexual act of a young boy. In fact, some early Greek societies, they took these children away from the mums around the age of 7, and they were put into boy camps, and they all had the older boy to mentor them. And so there was that homosexual relationship right on the get-go. And they had a problem in their cultures because these boys preferred to stay in a gay community and didn't want to get married. So they forced them to get married. But on the wedding night, they were having problems because these young gay boys didn't want to have sex with the opposite sex, with girls. So what they then did is they dressed these young girls up as young boys to encourage the homosexuals to have sex so that they could have babies, to increase the numbers in their society. Needless to say, it didn't work very well, and that was the beginning of the end of their society because they couldn't sustain their culture. Right, so artificial, made by art. From facere, to make, to do, to produce, so that these are all done by man. From pi, root, to set, put. So it's all being man-handled, all being artificially done. Compare French factice, meaning artificial, restored from Old French fetis, from Latin facticius, via the French word to Middle English, had fetis or fetis, being the adjective, cleverly made, it means neat or elegant, handsome, pretty. But in the Middle Ages, the romantic derivatives of the word took on magical senses. Compare Portuguese word for sorcery, witchcraft, wizardry with the Latin, and Spanish has become hechizo, artificial, imitated, also bewitchment, fascination. And I think if you've hung in with me with my poor pronunciation, you will get the idea that this fetish, this witchcraft we're seeing enacted and before our very eyes is artificial, it's bewitching, and it's fascinating, particularly for our young. And remember, Ishtar was all about the word young. She would make herself a young woman, she would make herself a young man, whatever she needed to do. So ancient art, pedophilia, as I've said, very much part of that. And sculptures having both the genitalia of a male and a female in the same imagery. So where can we see some of what I'm talking about right now in the world today? And I think probably the most colossal of all images of transgender would be the Statue of Liberty, because the Statue of Liberty is an icon of ancient mystery religion. It is an icon of the gods, small g. So let me go through a few points just so you can understand what I'm talking about. The Statue of Liberty was actually a gift from France, from the Masonic Masons in France. They wanted to gift that. They wanted this idea of Freemasonry enlightenment to be something very established. No one wanted it, but in the end they got it. They got it onto New York, and we know it was put on Bledisloe Island, that's now known as Liberty Island, because it's ancient mystery religion, and we're talking about the Jesuits that are in Masonic Masonry. It's about keeping their ancient mystery religion alive, their Jesuit spiritual exercises alive. It was dedicated, the Statue of Liberty, on the 28th of October in 1886, and if you add those numbers up, it'll come to 33, which is the highest degree in Masonic Masonry. It was a statue of Masonic enlightenment. It was the Jacobean Freemasons that were very active in the French Revolution that insisted that this get put, or at least donated, to America, because it was the same Jacobean Freemasons that were trying to incite the revolution in America at that time, because during the French Revolution in Britain and America there were pushes to have something similar happen there as well. So it was a very, very worrisome time for America and Britain. So the French Revolution, now it's the same goddess, but we see her in the French Revolution as Libertas. And you'll see the famous painting there with her bare-breasted, clearly, and she's wearing her Phrygian hat or her Mithraic hat. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. It all dovetails with the Statue of Liberty. The artist that put the Statue of Liberty, created the Statue of Liberty, he took a journey to Egypt, because Egypt is where ancient mystery religion really got a hold. It was around way before that, but it really got its hold. It got a life of its own and really jettisoned into the future life as we know it in the New Age movement in Babylon, but it really got a hold in Egypt. So it was Bartholdi that created it, put it together, and he went to Egypt in 1868 to get his masculine face making sure that that was going to be in the light of ancient gods. So Liberty's face is actually another god, and all these gods interchange really, but known as Attis. And Attis, he was known as the great mother of gods. And it was him that cut off his male genitalia so that he could become a female. And he's also known as Astarte. This is why Liberty has the spikes on her head, just like Attis or Astarte having the spike, the 7 spiked halo, Babylonian symbol of enlightenment for sun worship, and the sun god Utu, which actually is Ishtar's dad, but this is all interchange. I tell you, it becomes very complicated. Now, the framework for the Statue of Liberty was donated by the Freemason Gustav Eiffel of Eiffel Tower fame, because we know Eiffel Tower is an obelisk, which is the generative member, the sexual organ, male sexual organ, and that's what ancient mystery religion is all about. When the Statue of Liberty was put on Bledisloe Island, it was the Freemason General Sherman that made sure it was put on the island, because it couldn't be put on the mainland, because this all dovetails with the Vatican Holy See, S-E-E, the Pope calls himself, but also the sea, S-E-A, Marine Admiralty Law, or the law of the sea. So that's why it's there, because remember, we're all lost at sea. We're dead in our birth certificate. Now, the Statue of Liberty, because the Roman Catholic Church is ancient mystery religion with a very thin Christian veil. That's why they have Madonna and Child. It's Ishtar and Tammuz. And that's why they have Mary and Christ. They use the name Mary, they use the name Christ, but that is code for Ishtar and Tammuz. The Statue of Liberty was going to be in Roman Catholic robes, the scarlet and purple, and you'll read about that in the book of Revelations in the New Testament of the Holy Bible, and it makes it very clear who the beast is, who 666 is. That 666 beast wears scarlet and purple. But due to the expense that the Americans weren't prepared to take on, that was at the time decided, oh, we'll paint her up later on when we've got the money. The funding for that money never came in, and so it was later on decided, well, we'll leave her copper and we'll just let her tarnish into the beautiful green that she is now. There's a lot more that could be said. One thing I will say just before I move on is that in her hand she was supposed to have the cup full of wine that Revelation also talks about, being the Roman Catholic Church and the cup of the blood of the martyrs and all that sort of thing. But the fathers, the founding, or not founding fathers, but the fathers, the civil fathers of New York decided, no, if we're going to have her there on Bledisloe Island, we want that to be a gas-lit torch so that we can bring the shipping traffic up and down safely into harbour. So the bottom part is still the chalice, the Roman Catholic chalice, but the top half was put into a flame, being the eye of Lucifer or the eye of Cyrus, all to do with Ishtar, of course. So that's what we're seeing there. It's known as Liberty Island because the goddess Libertas was the goddess of prostitution, and most freed slaves, well, they weren't really freed, but they were given their liberty, because that's a different word than freedom. They found it really hard to make a living, and they usually ended up in Libertas temple as holy prostitutes. to do with the holy sex that they were able to give anyone that wandered in. Libertas was also known as the goddess of freedom and the goddess of liberty, but that also fitted with the goddess of war, because to get liberty, to get freedom, you often had to fight for it, which is where the Libertas, the goddess Libertas, became the goddess imagery symbol for the French Revolution. And she had a Phrygian or Mithric cap on, which meant that she was free. She had liberty, but she had to bow the knee to the papacy to get that liberty. And although in France it looked like the Catholicism was shot out of the water, it wasn't really. It just went back to its ancient roots, because then the Temple of Reason came in, and the goddesses and gods of that, and the human rights came in that the United Nations then took, all to do with ancient mystery religion, just swapping out something we already had by God himself, our inalienable rights, and they gave us ancient mystery rights that are only liberty, not freedom. So she was also known, Libertas or Ishtar, as the goddess of exiles, or the mother of harlots, because of the service that these women and she herself as a goddess gave. So Libertas was depicted on some ancient Roman coins as well, and she was either skimpily robed or seductively naked, often with her Phrygian hat, just to remind that she had to bow the knee then to pagan Rome. Remember, pagan Rome died, papal Rome rose. We're still under the Roman system as we speak. And so that is also mentioned by Cicero. He talks about Libertas as the mother of harlots. So it's in a lot of writings of ancient Roman civilization as well. So the empires in the Middle East and Egypt knew the goddess Inanna as Isis. So we get Isis and Horus. She was known as Ashtoreth to the Hebrews and the Cypriots and the Greeks, and later on known as Astarte. And the Greeks also then renamed her as Aphrodites. So we're looking at the same god. So you can take a little bit from these ancient stories and you get a big picture of who Ishtar is. The Romans named her Libertas, and later they named her Venus. And we know we have the birth of Venus, and Venus is Satan or Lucifer as a heavenly body. So the allure of Ishtar was her doctrine of holy sex. And I think all this transgender fiasco we're seeing today is a religion. It's the epitome of freedom and holiness in humanistic terms. So this is where this all dovetails. Holy prostitution, but at the same time making sure that the genders are gone and that people can't have babies, because the same big pharma, the same big techno-medical complex are, as we speak, working on having babies in laboratories, grown in false or manufactured wombs, all to do with this fetish and artificial and art. I want to finish on a couple of quotes. This one is by James L. Chapman, and his book, Americanism versus Romanism, 1856. Now, Romanism is what the Roman Catholic Church was called. Everyone knew it as Romanism because it was pagan Rome coming up like the phoenix out of the ashes. It was the beast, pagan Rome, that was killed, and papal Rome that rose, a mortal wound, and rose. And so it was known as Romanism. It was sometime in the 1800s during the Enlightenment period that they revamped their name took the word Catholic from, which just means universal, from Protestant Christianity and called themselves the Universal Roman Church, Romanism, the Roman Catholic Church. This is in the mid-1800s, and all the early Spurgeon, you name any minister of the gospel back then, Protestant minister of the gospel, was very clear what was happening. And they were being whistleblowers. They were speaking out as watchmen on the walls. So this is what Chapman said. It is in my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, we can put the West in there, remember, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars in Europe, and that is true. I show that quite clearly in my book, We Are Revolting. If you want to get some great background information, think about purchasing my book, We Are Revolting. I am a better writer than I am an orator. I do this because I feel I should, not because I think that I'm great at it. But you'll get a lot out of We Are Revolting. It's on Amazon. Sadly, the book depository has closed, being taken out by the big Amazon. If you are in New Zealand, you can buy them straight from me. Roman Catholic Church is Mithraism. It is ancient mystery religion. I'll finish on this quote. This is by Charles P. Chiniquy, and he was a Roman Catholic priest that became a Christian, and he wrote books. One of his books was 50 Years in the Church of Rome. But he said this: undoubtedly, it is the intention of the Pope to possess this country, America, the West. It is his intention. He has sided by the Jesuits and all Catholic prelates and priests. If the Catholic Church becomes predominant here, which it pretty much is, Protestants will all be exterminated. And there it is. And that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing the fury of Ishtar. We're seeing the destruction of the West that sits on Protestant Christianity. You do not need to be a Christian. It's the freedoms that Protestant Christianity gives that is the point here. And once we have that gone, as Dawkins said, I really worry about the demise of Christianity, because it just might be the bulwark to something worse. It is the walls protecting us from something worse. Ishtar is on the stone wall, and she is destroying it with bricks. She's destroying a Protestant Christianity that gives us all freedoms, regardless of what religion we are. You are free. That's your choice. We need to arise. We need to push back. We need to start gathering in our communities. We need to learning about He Wakuputanga in New Zealand and start to look to get a national backing. As you know, I used to be with the Wakaminenga Māori government. 20 of us pulled out earlier on this year. We didn't like what we saw inside. The culture changed. It did not align with us as freedom fighters. It did not align with everything that I spent 2022 traveling with my husband, explaining to people around the country. We had new people arrive within the Wakaminenga Māori government, and the old guard, which I was part of, was slowly pushed out, and the new guard took over. It is a new look Wakaminenga Māori government, no longer can be that national covering for us, I am very sad to say. He Wakaputanga is alive. We need to be thinking about what that will look like. I am in dialogue with other great people through the country, right through New Zealand. We're putting together something that could look more like what it should be, a bottom-up national backing for all those that want to stand in He Wakaputanga jurisdiction. So I'm going to leave it there today. Thank you very much for joining me. Bless you now.